Welcome everybody to Digital Citizenship Virtual World Information Literacy by Dr. Valerie Hill, also known as Valibrarian Gregg. The presentation will be a visit to and tour of the Digital Citizenship Exhibit at the Community Virtual Library and an encounter with the various perspectives on how digital culture requires personal responsibilities. And I also wanted to mention that a permanent Digital Citizenship Museum is planned in Kitely. Also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dr. Hill. She received her MLS from Texas Women's University in 2007 and a PhD in Library and Information Science in 2012. She's a librarian and information science educator with a research focus on the intersection of information literacy and global digital participatory culture. Taught at all age levels, served as a school librarian, and is a national writing project trainer. Working in virtual worlds for the past decades, her focus has been providing virtual world resources and archiving immersive learning experiences through machinima. For the past decade, she has worked on embedding information literacy, particularly digital citizenship, in curriculum, online learning platforms, and virtual worlds. Valerie has presented at conferences both physically and virtually, and she currently serves as the president of the Community Virtual Library in Second Life, which is just on the hill up behind us. A current project is a virtual world database of learning environments and communities. We are so happy to have Val cooperating and participating in the SLMOOC course again. So without further ado, take it away, Val.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Welcome, everyone. The only bad thing about the SLMOOC is it's so hard to get to every awesome presentation. There's been so many great and diverse presentations here. Thank you for that nice information, so I'll skip a little bit here. She's said pretty much everything. I do want to mention that the Community Virtual Library is expanding. This is our main hub in Second Life, but we're also expanding to other virtual worlds, including Kitely, InWorlds, the web-based virtual world of Cyber Lounge, and in the near future to Avacon, because we do believe that virtual worlds are evolving, and just sticking to one particular space is not really a sustainable plan. We really want to explore numerous virtual world platforms and help connect them. And Maggie mentioned the virtual world database. We really believe that finding and sharing and collaborating with each other is the key to the future of virtual worlds. So on Friday at the Second Life MOOC, this Friday, the 16th of June, we'll be sharing a program about the virtual world database and ways that you can connect and collaborate and share the great work you're doing or find high-quality immersive learning environments across virtual worlds. So today I'm going to be talking about virtual digital citizenship and the exhibit here on display at the Community Virtual Library, which will be on display through August the 31st. So why digital citizenship? That's the question. Well, rapidly, learning has changed. And it's changed from a primarily print-based literacy, where students learned to read and write, to where we all live now in global digital participatory culture, which means wherever you go, you see people learning on mobile devices. A whole library is now available in your pocket. And so that changed so quickly. Wherever we go, we have access to information 24/7. And I like to put that this way. We live in digital culture, we live in virtual worlds, whether or not we have an avatar. That's really beside the point. We all live in virtual spaces. So I've been sort of studying this and trying to adapt to the new tools like virtual reality head-mount displays, headsets, which are a completely different animal, not really as immersive as a virtual world. That lacks that sense of presence. But all of these tools point to the fact that we all are living in virtual worlds. And an example of that is if you just look around you. The other day I took this photo that's on the slide right now. I was riding the bus. Every single person on the bus was staring at a screen. They were not actually on the bus. Their minds were elsewhere. And I'm sure you've had that same experience when you walk into a cafe or you go in wherever you are, people of all ages. They are looking at devices and their minds are entering these virtual spaces. And that's part of why we need to learn what digital citizenship actually is. It happens too quickly for people to understand the impact. Most people don't even realize the importance of a personal responsibility for digital citizenship. So we not only have instant access to information in our pockets 24/7 and on our screens and devices, we have this connectivity with our family and our friends and our colleagues and our communities for learning. But we're also uploading content. We're not only intaking it, but we're uploading it. So we're prosumers, both producing and consuming information. We're leaving digital footprints in all of these online spaces daily. And even young children are leaving digital footprints. They use information devices in kindergarten and even before that age. So I found in my school library that the kindergartners who entered were more comfortable using a mouse than a pencil. So I would often ask the parents of these young students, at what age do you think your child is beginning to leave digital footprints? And often those parents would answer, oh, I'd say around age 8 or 9. But wait, sometimes parents post a sonogram of their unborn child before that child is even born. So if you think about it, digital citizenship can even begin before birth. It's quite a responsibility for us all. So when you think about what exactly is that personal responsibility you're talking about, we are now personally responsible for everything that we create and curate online. We're personally responsible for how we represent ourselves in all of the virtual and digital spaces that we interact across the globe. We're responsible for the authenticity and the trust that we create with other people. We're personally responsible for how we collaborate with people, how we interact, for our respect of people and intellectual property. We're also personally responsible for actually balancing our time in all these spaces, physical, virtual, or augmented. Nobody can do it for us when you've got a digital device in your pocket 24/7. We're personally responsible for remaining open to new ideas, and realizing that there are dangers if we do not balance and remain open to new ideas. There are dangers of creating information silos where we only follow people who think exactly like we do, and we sort of delete or defriend the people who have opposing viewpoints. We also are not open to new ideas when we create personal dashboards of incoming information that don't really challenge us. And also, we're responsible for curating the communities that we belong to and evaluating them, evaluating all of the content that we are intaking on a daily basis. That's a huge responsibility when you think about it, because we have to evaluate the news, we have to evaluate everything. And growing up, those of you that are my age, or even if you were born really, if you're not a millennial, even the Generation Xers, grew up in a world where you didn't really have to have a passport and change it every so often. Those days are over. We now live in a digital culture where even really young children have to understand digital citizenship. So we created the Digital Citizenship Exhibit here at the Community Virtual Library, and it opened in March, and it will be up through August of 2017. Then it's been so successful, we're thinking that this is not a subject that's going away. If anything, it's becoming more essential that people understand digital citizenship. So our plan, as we move and explore other virtual worlds, our plan is to build a permanent digital citizenship museum in Kitely. And if you're interested in that, we're still open to a lot of perspectives on this topic. Even if you only want to create a slide or a sign or just any type of thing, get with me later and I can tell you more about the museum that we'll be building in Kitely. Currently, we have artists in our display that are even showing visual metaphors for concepts of digital citizenship like privacy and cybersecurity. We have kiosks that tell about health information literacy. When you think about, can you trust all the medical information? How do you evaluate that online for your own personal health? We have one exhibit on current empowerment for political activism and how, how we can be informed in the political environments using open source Creative Commons tools. And how do you evaluate that with so much content coming at us every day? We also have, when you think about digital citizenship, so many perspectives on what it means, and to share and understand all those perspectives, that's what we invite you to do as you wander the Digital Citizenship Exhibit. We have a couple of spaces left. We're still building, and it's growing even as we speak. One of the artists, and you'll see in the slide that I'm sharing right now in the middle kiosk on this slide, one decided to create a sort of a metaphor, a futuristic vision of a dystopian future if we don't take digital citizenship seriously. What kind of consequences might there be? The one on the left is digital citizenship for kids. Marie Vans, an educator, has a lot of tips and ideas and some tools for how we can get kids to understand their own personal responsibility for this. And then the one on the right is really interesting. It's from the Second Life Bar Association. Lawyers are really thinking about the rights and responsibilities of avatars and in the future of artificial intelligence. Recently here at the Community Virtual Library, we had a presentation on this, and the creator brought in a robot that would interact with the audience. It was very interesting, and we'll be doing another follow-up on that later in the summer if that sounds interesting. Be sure and join the Second Life Library 2.0 group so you can hear more about that, because as we think about the future, digital citizenship isn't just about right now as it evolves in the future. Artificial intelligence and the responsibility for that is also an interesting topic. One of our presenters created a guide, a library guide with tips for us on how to evaluate that current buzzword that we really heard all year about the fake news. And, how can we really personally evaluate news and all of the information that we encounter all of the time? We have to agree that that is not always easy, and it certainly has become a personal responsibility. I mentioned the Second Life Library 2.0 group. If you're interested, and it's a good time to join if you want to keep up with topics about information literacy such as this one. We also have a Google group called Metaverse Libraries. If you search Google Groups, you can join that, because as I said, we're not just in Second Life, we're traveling throughout the metaverse, through the open sim grids, hypergrid jumping to other worlds to connect and collaborate for information literacy, or what some people might even say, meta literacy. One of the presentations, the one on the slide that you see now, the one on the left of the screen, talks about the topic of terms of service. And up at the top, she had this really cool little space that sort of rotated, and at the bottom, all of those many, many sites and applications that we interact with daily. And how we just click away and say yes to the terms of service, mainly because they're written in a long legalese language that's very difficult to understand, even if you were a lawyer. And the reason we simply agree, often we justify this by saying to ourselves, well, all of my friends and my colleagues use this app. I'm sure it's safe. It must be okay, and I really need to keep up, so I use it. And we just agree, often wondering in the back of our minds how much of our personal data we're giving away, to all of these apps. I'd like you to type a Y in the text chat if you've ever wondered about that. When you just click agree, what am I actually agreeing to? I know all of us do that. The presenter on the right, we have one here on the storytelling and language learning in Evo Village 2017. And I think, throughout the month of June here at the MOOC, a lot of the presenters are actually sharing some of their content here at the MOOC as well. And so it's great to be able to connect and collaborate and have people share their perspective on this topic, as there's so many various perspectives on the topic. You can see in this slide, we've got Inspiration Island, talking about whole brain activities. And some of those are ways that we can share accurate content, and really accuracy and helping citizens of all ages to interact in these virtual spaces is part of digital citizenship. I mentioned earlier the topic of being authentic and trustworthy when you build communities in virtual worlds. One of the people that's an expert on that topic, many of you know Renee Richmond Brock, who's also Zinnia in virtual worlds. Zinnia does a lot of presentations on authenticity and trust and build and branding of your avatar. And then you'll see the third one from the left is Ewan Bonham's virtual world meditation. I've gone to a couple of his sessions. I mentioned earlier how digital citizens must understand how to balance their time. When you think about internet addiction and how easy it is to, you see people who just cannot put their phone down. You know, it's so easy to get lost in your in technology and not understand how to balance your time. And so going to a virtual world meditation really is an interesting thing because you interact with light and sound and just breathing and understanding the concept of thinking about reflection and balancing of our time. It's so hectic to try to keep up sometimes with technology. The one on the far right of that screen is a flash fiction writing kiosk that really I found interesting because it kind of points to the concept of how digital citizens is so easy to create this content that's often just disposable and you don't really dig deep into critical thinking, and that her Flash Fiction Center really makes you think about that, how you can write and interact and become information literate and be a good digital citizen by really critically thinking about that. Yes, Cami Rembrandt has done a really exciting project here, and she's also sharing it in various virtual worlds through OR files, which also helps us think about how important it is that we expand beyond just one virtual world platform for the long-term sustainability of virtual worlds. One of the most fascinating exhibit presentations I thought during the Digital Citizenship Exhibit was the one on prison access to information in prison. Actually, you'll see Species is right here in the audience, and he presented at the Nonprofits Commons just this last Saturday. He's working with an individual who's really interested in how people behind bars, how their rehabilitation and their human need for literacy is changing, and how if they have no access to any technology tools, think how far behind you would become. And I thought of that almost as digital citizens in handcuffs. It's a really fascinating topic, and it led me to do a little bit of research on how much access they have, and it is extremely limited how much access to information many prisoners actually have. And when we walk over there, when you walk into his kiosk that he built, you get the sense of being enclosed behind bars. So how cool to have so many different perspectives on digital citizenship. Now, during one of the tours, we did some live tours from between March and today in the last couple of months. During one of the tours, as I was talking, it was late one evening, and many of the people had already gone on from the tour. We had some griefers arrive at the Digital Citizenship Tour. And fortunately, one of the educators snapped a few snapshots here. But I brought this up because I was really caught off guard by this situation. I was talking about digital citizenship to educators who were interested in how to teach this, when suddenly someone started using extremely foul, obscene language. And I didn't really, it was like I kind of forgot how to eject someone in Second Life because I was so caught off guard. So I simply blocked the two that were using the foul language. Later I realized that did not block them from everyone hearing it. It really only blocked them from me hearing it. So I should have ejected. But I remembered years ago when I first came into Second Life, I had gone to a librarian's class. She was teaching on griefing. And she had said at the time, you need to remember in a virtual space that if something gets really out of control and you're feeling threatened, you can always log out. But certainly I did not want to log out and leave my tour of educators simply because I was caught off guard and my heart was pounding. So I kept on going, and I calmly explained the purpose of the exhibit, and I kept on talking about the importance of digital citizenship, explaining that we were in an educational sim and that we're in a real working library. And there were really, as I said, only a few educators there. And as I kept on talking, the griefers actually they seemed to start to listen. As I said, one of the educators took these shots here. So I think what I'm pointing out here, the only reason I'm using these pictures is to point, it was so ironic that they were pointing out exactly the essential need for digital citizenship. Two of them actually reported the incident as I kept on talking. This was really the first time in all the years that I've worked at the Community Virtual Library for a griefer to interrupt in this particular way, knowingly. And certainly the first time I'd heard some of the obscenities this person was saying, but as I said, I think it was a really great example. And a couple of the educators contacted me later to say that it really was a perfect example for them, and it was handled really, really well. One of Dahlia, some of you may know her in Second Life, she captured this shot, which I think it's such a meta photo when you think about it. Here's Dahlia taking a selfie as an avatar of virtual world griefers in a virtual world holding up this sign. I mean, if that isn't meta-modernism, I don't know what it is. It's like, and one of the griefers pointed out here that Hitler wrote a book. Well, and saying that we were maybe, we need free speech here or something like that. And I started to think, well, certainly Hitler wrote a book, but I think you can tell the intent of that sign is really disruptive. So, even though that is true. So I think it's just interesting that here we were. It's a great example of what I'm talking about. Digital citizenship needs to be taught from an early age. And one of the best resources that I've found for teaching digital citizenship is commonsensemedia.org. When I was a school librarian, my entire school was certified as a digital citizenship school. I took students into Minecraft to build a digital citizenship game where they would embed a lot of elements of digital citizenship that they can learn at a really young age. So I think parents too need to find resources like this where they can teach their children how to not only be private online, safe and secure online, but how to be respectful online. As educators, I think we realize there are a lot of reasons that people enter virtual worlds. Perhaps those griefers that I mentioned, perhaps they just thought it was really being funny to come into a world, and try to intimidate other people. But I think young people need to realize it's not funny to be threatening, and certainly hiding behind anonymity. That is something that digital citizenship really doesn't need to be doing. So we really need to think about how young people can understand what this means, and can also understand that our worlds are not only physical, but they're also virtual and augmented. We are who we are in all spaces. So after the grand opening, we had a culminating activity. Our graphic designer built a data cloud way up above the Digital Citizenship Exhibit. And I think that was a really cool idea because it kind of makes you think about how everything's going to the cloud. So we went up into the cloud and we kind of did a dance and kind of talked about digital citizenship up in the cloud at our data party in the cloud. So, I think digital citizenship, as I mentioned, also includes cybersecurity. And I think that's a topic that is really important, not just to individuals, but to all organizations. We hear so much about it on the news with hackers and just, cybersecurity is a huge and essential topic for the future. I would like to find some more contributions about that topic to put in our permanent digital citizenship museum that we're planning for Kitely. And of course, we'll certainly credit all of the contributors. I'm currently enrolled in a MOOC just myself, just to understand a little bit more about the elements of cybersecurity. But if you know anybody who's interested in that as well, I'd love to get some more information on that. So as I said, we have today on this slide, you see we're talking about digital citizenship at the Second Life MOOC 2017, but at the end of August, when we're getting ready to close the exhibit, be watching for this because we're going to plan a closing event And we're kind of going to call it the end of the beginning, because at the closing event, we're going to talk about how we're building our Kitely Digital Citizenship Museum. And maybe it will also address how we can archive spaces like this, because for them to just go away, you know, when it's great to archive them, of course, through photos, images, through machinima, but I think also kind of thinking about OR files and being able to move our content onto another space as it evolves is another way that we can think about how digital citizenship may evolve. And this museum could kind of archive the early beginnings of virtual world digital citizenship, and yet also evolve as virtual worlds grow. So that's our goal. We're going to be using Google Drive so that people who are not wanting to build the content themselves can put their information in Google Drive, and we'll have builders that will help them res that into the virtual world space. So depending upon their skill level. So that's a bit about what we're working on. And as I mentioned, we're working on a virtual world database of resources. I'm facing you all, so it's to my left, but to your right of me, you see a little stand with a book on it. If you click on that, you should get a link, or I'm also putting it in the text chat, to our virtual world database form. I'm going to be inviting anyone who's interested in virtual worlds to add to this form so that we can collect high-quality communities of various interests and topics in virtual worlds to create a database. Because I think, as I mentioned, for the future of virtual worlds, it's really important that we're able to find each other, to find not only the high-quality immersive learning spaces and the landmarks in virtual worlds, but also communities, because it's people that make virtual worlds great. It isn't going into a space, a simulated space, all by yourself. Because we don't learn in isolation. We learn in collaboration with others. So I invite you to fill in this form, and if you don't know all the information about a high-quality sim or community, just fill in the part you know. We do not mind having duplications in our spreadsheet, because all of that can be ironed out for the database as we go along. It's a new project that we're currently just working on. So feel free to contact me later if you have suggestions for our database, or you're interested in participating in our Digital Citizenship Exhibit here in Second Life between now and the closing at the end of August, or if you're interested in our Virtual Digital Citizenship Museum in Kitely. So I'm going to invite you all to stand up and follow me now into the Virtual World Digital Citizenship Exhibit. But first I might want to point out that we have a little parcel a line here. When you cross, music may start, and if it gets kind of loud, just turn your music down just turn it off at the top of your screen, because we will continue in voice as we go into the Digital Citizenship Museum. I have a few of the presenters here. And so we will walk to those and let them briefly share about their presentations as we go along. I know we'll walk straight into the middle of the downstairs area first, and then we'll see where we'll go about on the upper deck as well. So follow me. Okay, if you're hearing the Beatles, you might want to turn that down or turn that off so we can share here in stage. I'm looking around to see if there are any of the lower deck exhibitors here. If you're here, would you please speak up so I can let you talk about your exhibit? I already kind of gave an overview of mine, but many of these interactive kiosks have boxes in front of them where you can click for more information, to go to get handouts and information. I think this is an interesting one here. An artist I think this speaks to privacy. You can click on this little box. I'm going to stand right in front of this one. You can get some free wearable band lines. Think about how we have to protect ourselves with cybersecurity. You can wear these band lines on your avatar. It's just kind of just a way to think about cybersecurity and that importance. We've got a lot of other just creative different ideas here about the importance of various elements of digital citizenship, from information literacy and evaluation of content to evaluation of the news to helping children understand digital citizenship and many different other ideas here on the lower deck floor. This one over here, some of you may know Sheila Weber, who's a professor in the UK. She is an expert on information literacy and how it's changing in digital culture. I admire her work very much. She works here in Second Life. And you can click on some of her research sources here. Click for a note card on how to become information literate in digital culture. So there's a lot of different kiosks here on the lower deck. I think we have a couple of our presenters up on the upper deck here, and I'm going to let them speak a bit about their content themselves. You can either go outside and fly up, or I invite you to walk and follow me and just touch the floor, and where all the bits and bytes are floating, you'll teleport upstairs to the upper deck. So follow me over this way. And I'm going to stand here by the teleporter. If you'll just touch the floor under all the bits and bytes, you'll choose teleport. You can teleport upstairs, and we'll wander about and see some of the upper deck. Of course, you're welcome to come back here and interact with each one of the presentations of our Digital Citizenship exhibit. Make sure everybody finds the upper deck all right. And then we'll start upstairs. All right, I think everybody's making it up here all right. And as you're looking around up here, you can see we do have a little bit more space up here too. So if there's someone that you think's got something really important they could add here, that would be just wonderful. I'm going to start, let's see, over here. If you'll follow me right over here, I think I'm standing next to Xenia's. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Xenia Bastet. Would you like to say briefly a little bit about your exhibit here, just kind of what your concept of digital citizenship is? Feel free to use voice or text.
Okay. I'm going to try to use voice today. As you can see by my profile, I'm 1 year old, but just like in real life, I want everything yesterday. So I came in and set up a sim, and it's kind of an extension of my real life projects in socially engaged art. This is called the Blue Zebra Project, and you can see by the photograph at the top images of what the sim looks like. And so I have yoga and meditation and some things that some of my other very close friends in SL also have on their sims. And yeah, my main purpose though is to collaborate and interact with other people who are also using SL for similar community building and human sustainability, health and wellness purposes. Okay, I think that's about what I have to say about it for now.
Great.
But the websites, I have a blog site, but you'll notice that I haven't posted yet. I've been working for about a week on a post to celebrate my first year in virtual worlds, and I'm struggling.
Great. Thank you so much. Excellent. For the short amount of time you've been in a virtual world, you've got some great information to share. That's great. And when I was speaking earlier at the slides, I mentioned the one here, and it's just to the right of Xenia's correctional access in prison. I'm going to let Species talk a little bit about his concept of digital citizenship. Species? Yes, sounds great.
Prisoners on their way out how to design video games, which in itself is challenging because giving them access to the internet is not okay. So they're only allowed to work within environments that don't have access outward to the internet. But I found it really inspiring, and one of the things that I think is really important is giving prisoners access to a creative outlet, not only for job training, but you know, it's motivating to be able to have agency. I know we all have agency with our avatars. We take, you know, a little bit of our style and kind of mix it together, or some new character. But for prisoners to have that is very different because the culture inside of prison is so different. And there's so many logistical struggles as far as getting access to technology in prison. I put a VR headset in here because one of the things that is really difficult is there's so much red tape when it comes to even just getting a hole in the wall drilled to, you know, get access to an electronic device for a prisoner. So there's a challenge behind it, but at the same time, these people a lot of them are going to be out of prison, and they have a really high rate of return. So one of the things I want to work towards is helping prisoners learn how to express themselves in virtual worlds, and how, you know, create an exit plan, pairing with therapists and mentors, instructors, to help them develop a plan to get out of prison and be successful when they get out. And that's about that. If you look inside, there's a couple of videos, and on the computer screen, there's an article that they had recently out here in Forks, which is near Clallam Bay. It's Forks Forum had a discussion about art behind bars and some of the impact.
Excellent. And feel free to walk inside the cell and get the impact. The way he's designed this, when you're inside, if you look towards the bars, you will get the feeling that you're enclosed inside that space. I am taking a couple of snapshots. I hope if there's anybody that doesn't want me to do that, let me know. I'd like to take a few pictures. I'm working on creating a machinima to capture some of the great work that's been done here to show these various perspectives on digital citizenship. And I'm really impressed by and inspired by the different the different ways people have interpreted this personal responsibility, and not just for children or for the elderly or for people in educational settings, but to include prisoners and to include people with disabilities. And there's so many different perspectives on what it means to be a digital citizen and to have access to information and utilize these various spaces. I mentioned earlier the idea of trust. As an educator and a librarian, for me, I feel like I came into a virtual world to do the exact same thing as a librarian here that I do in the physical world. But I also realize there are many reasons for entering a virtual world. Some people come in for role play scenarios, and there actually are libraries for role play. Caledon Library is a role play library of high quality that's been around Second Life for years and years. So part of digital citizenship also is understanding the variety of reasons that we utilize virtual worlds and virtual spaces. And I mentioned Zinnia. Her presentation is over here. I think some of you have probably been to some of Zinnia's talk on inspiring trust with virtual identity. And I've had the pleasure of working with Zinnia several times in the physical world as well as the virtual world. Zinnia looks very much like her avatar. In fact, she designs some fabrics in the physical world and dresses in the physical world very much like her avatar. She's even, she told me one time that she actually took a photograph of her irises to put in her avatar's eyes. She really pays attention to detail about being her authentic true self in a virtual world. But not everyone does that. I mean, some people want to be something really creative, like a dragon or an animal or just something. But I think whatever one creates in a virtual world, there is that inner essence that comes through. And so I'd like to see you maybe type a Y if this has happened to you. Have you ever met someone that you've known in a virtual world, and as soon as you meet them, they are exactly like the essence of the avatar that you met? And whether that is what they look like visually or just their essence just comes through, and they're the same. Because reality really is within your mind and within your words, and you're able to cut to that essence through the visual sense of presence that you have in a virtual world. So yes, it's really been fun to get to meet some people in the virtual world. And I believe Species, isn't Zinnia one of your instructors? I believe that there's a connection there as well. It's right. So. Very exciting to meet people in the physical world that you know in the virtual world as well. And let's see, I think we have, let's see, do we have anybody here that wanted to mention anything about Inspiration Island, Whole Brain Health?
Yes, yeah, I will.
Go ahead. Okay.
Thanks. I just wanted to say what we've got here is we focus very much on people we call elders or seniors. I hate to say you guys, but if you call us elderly, we get really upset. That's a new thing today. And what I think is so important, if you click on the gift box, you'll get a T-shirt, and you'll also get kind of an explanation of what we're really trying to do and why we're trying to do it, and why it's so important for people over the age of, let's say, retirement, to come into Second Life, we think, and how we're working to make that happen. So a lot of our focus is on that, because so many people I know who are older do not use the computer or shy away from it. And I think they're missing a great deal by doing that in so many of the ways you've talked about today, Val. So I'm really working hard to bring more people into Second Life and places like this, so that they can participate in really the way the world is moving forward. Elder is good. Elderly is a different word, right? Sitting and knitting crocheting and stuff like that, which I do, I have to say, in spite of in addition to other things. So anyway, if you look in our gift box, you will get some of that information plus a T-shirt plus other stuff. And I just want to add too that Lady Brielle, who has the health exhibit, has a health hacienda on Inspiration Island. I agree with you that they're really wonderful. Crochet and knitting are very good for the nerves, for sure, for calmness, almost as good as meditation. She has all of her health quizzes there on Inspiration Island, and Ewan has a weekly meditation group on Inspiration Island, because we feel that the whole person has to be taken account of as a digital person and as a real person. So I think I said it all. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. And I have moved over here to Ewan's. There's a presentation over here. Ewan has one over here about mindfulness meditation in a virtual world. And so I'm standing at his kiosk. And I mentioned, he came and spoke for the American Library Association. We have a group that meets here at the Community Virtual Library. It's the Association of College and Research Libraries. And we meet usually on the third Sunday of the month. And he came and spoke on virtual world meditation. And at first I thought, well, why would you go into a virtual world to meditate? But then I realized there are some things you can do in a virtual world that you can't do in a physical world to meditate. And that's surround yourself with the colors of an aura, with with the sound effects, with a and he led us through a breathing exercise in a virtual world, utilizing these beautiful virtual world spaces and colors and sounds. And it was extremely relaxing, I will have to say. Has anybody else gone to one of these sessions? Oh yes, I see many of you have. Well, it seems like Sunday afternoons, 3 o'clock, Second Life time is kind of the current time where there's some of these virtual world sessions are for meditation are taking place. If you haven't tried it, it really does help you contemplate the idea of balancing your physical life with your virtual life now that technology has just, embedded itself within our daily living. And sometimes I've liked to say, technology has not made my life easier. It's just allowed me to accomplish twice as much. But do I really need to? That's a personal responsibility to not make yourself go 24/7 and not balance and reflect and relax. There's something to be said for relaxation. Yes, and know how much is enough. You're right, exactly. Let's see, there was something else I was just thinking about with the virtual world meditation. I'm going to mention something else in Kitely. What was it? You were talking about something that reminded. Oh yes, I know what it is. In Kitely, as the Community Virtual Library is moving to Kitely, when you were talking about seniors liking, one of the relaxation activities people have is crochet and working artistically with physical things like sewing and making things. It's great to make these things in the virtual world, but it's also great to have the tactile things in the physical world. Well, I'm going to put in text chat a project. We're collaborating with New Media Arts, the Community Virtual Library is, and they have an antique pattern library in Kitely. And what that is, it's old manuscripts and patterns that are just some really ancient, and as well as like old quilt patterns and tapestry patterns. And we're just sort of scanning and putting those into the virtual world so that they won't get lost. It's a way to archive these antique patterns. And so I gave you the link to the Antique Pattern Library. Many of the books and images from the Antique Pattern Library will be lost if they're not, scanned and because they're, as they disintegrate or they're out of copyright, nobody will ever see these antique patterns. And so what a great way to archive that and share them for the future in a virtual world space. Yes, the Community Virtual Library is still going to be here in Second Life. Thank you for asking that question. This will be our main hub. Second Life is still, most people agree, the best place for people to start in virtual worlds because all the tools are at your fingertips and because there are so many spaces already developed and so many communities here on a global scale. So this is our main hub of the Community Virtual Library. We're not going away, but we're just expanding to some other virtual worlds. But all of our main activities will still take place here. And we do have a lot of activities here, such as trivia nights on the first and third Wednesday. We have book discussions on the fourth Friday of every month. We have a working reference desk with real world librarians who come in and help people with getting around virtual worlds, but as well as working on the virtual world database. We really rely on volunteers. Just as a public library, or really any type of library, has Friends of the Library organizations that help them, because libraries are living organisms that are constantly curating and reading content. Well, in a virtual world, it's the same. If you're interested in working with us and collaborating and connecting, feel free to contact me later. We do offer office hours for people to come in and hang out at the library, meet other people, and connect and collaborate. We work very closely with the nonprofit commons, since we're a nonprofit, and helping connect all of the great communities like the Virtual Pioneers, ISTE, the Virtual World Education Roundtable, and the Virtual World's Best Practices in Education Conference. All of those educational communities, our goal is to feature them and promote what they're doing. I just want to kind of mention that what librarians do in the physical world is gather and curate content for their community, usually physical content, but also electronic databases. Well, it's the same in a virtual world. What we strive to do is gather and collect useful information for the virtual world communities, and that's all of you and the great work that you're doing. What we want to do is figure out how to promote that. And so it's like, if you have not already offered friendship, feel free to connect. I recently connected with a couple of you who I plan to maybe bring some of our different communities to a tour to your space, to highlight what it is you're doing. That's what the Community Virtual Library is here for. We're not here to say, oh, come see our cool library and we'll just, give you a link to the web. There's no need to go into a virtual world to get a link to the web. What we're here for is to connect and collaborate with you and what you're doing and feature that great work, so that it doesn't get buried in what I call the sea of chaos online, which is just the flood of information online, trying to connect and collaborate with those people. So that's what we're striving to do here, and it cannot be done alone. It can't take, 4 or 5 librarians can't do this. It takes a lot of people to connect and collaborate and continue to grow in the future. So that's kind of what we're working on. And I want to say again, it's so hard to go to all of the Second Life MOOC great presentations, and there were several that I'm having to miss due to other conflicts and commitments. But I do strive to see what those Second Life MOOC topics are, so that I can connect with those people later and add them to our virtual world database, which we're going to be sharing, as I said, on Friday. So if you come on Friday, you can hear a little bit. It's at noon Friday the 16th, and it'll take place right over there where I just talked about digital citizenship. And the idea is to figure out the best ways to make this database great and useful, and to share what you all are doing or your favorite communities that you've found that are high quality, either artistically or educational, with educational content or immersive learning content, and also how to hypergrid to these other spaces. We can't go to all of them. Nobody can be everywhere all the time. So it's impossible. You could stay up all night and never sleep and you still wouldn't get to every virtual world activity or learn about, how to hypergrid and get to all of the spaces. But through connecting with each other, at least we can be aware of them and be aware of where the best content and community for people might be for different various purposes. So I do want to close by just opening up a few minutes to see if there are any questions about the Community Virtual Library or about digital citizenship and where all of this is headed. Any questions in text, or feel free in voice?
I'm just glad to hear CVL saying. When you said it was moving, I was scared.
Oh, could you repeat that? I had to turn your voice up. I couldn't quite hear. Was that Cat's Eye?
I was staying here as well. When you said moving, I thought, oh no, leaving. So I know it just is an incredible space and an incredible asset to Second Life, and I'm glad it's staying. I don't know if this is the time or place, but I thought I'd mention when we were back at the Whole Brain exhibit, I forgot to mention that Marley Molina is also going to give a presentation on our island, and it involves her symbolic representations, or SymMods, where people can present how she does work with people to get in touch with their inner processes, their emotions, or their thoughts about various things going on in their lives. And so she uses paintings and sculptures, and she'll be giving a presentation, I believe, on the 15th at 10 Second Life time in our Butterfly Gallery. So I thought I'd bring that up too.
Great. I'm glad you mentioned Marley. She did a great presentation for us. I actually have a little YouTube. I was able to capture some machinima. Marley does these amazing virtual world sessions for art that are live. She came over to the Community Virtual Library, she had a pianist who was playing the piano, and artists who built while they were listening to the music live in front of us in the virtual space. So thinking about how art and music and virtual world spaces all intersect is something that Marley is really pioneering a new territory here. And so that machinima I just put a YouTube in was that live event where she came and did that, and she does a lot of those live sessions, and I think it's great. And she also does a lot with art and just almost a psychological aspect of thinking about art and interpreting, and also kind of where that intersects with 3D building. So, and it really ties in with digital citizenship and understanding authenticity of self and intellectual property, the balance between intellectual freedom and respect for intellectual property, and thinking about what belongs to others, and always putting up just giving credit where credit is due. And Molly's really a great advocate of all of that. Any other questions? Oh, and I think Fran is here. And Fran is, aren't you like a right-hand person for Marley? So it's good to have you here.
Fran, yeah, I and Kat's both working with her actually right now. I've worked with Marley since 2012 probably, and helping her just set up her her presentations, and just kind of being the person who handles a lot of the behind the scenes things that goes on. But yes, and Ketsa is going to be working with her and helping to get more people, get the word out there more, and to get more people make more people aware of her programs and such. So
yes, great. And Marley had a couple of great suggestions for our database. We're just starting this database, and we have kinks to iron out, of course, which with all new technology ideas to make it really useful. And it's a little clunky right now, but that's okay. You got to start somewhere, and it will evolve where we can have the various fields the most successful for people to be able to connect and find the information they're needing, by different topics, for virtual worlds. So she had some really good suggestions there. I hope that there's nobody here that wanted to talk a little bit more about a specific one of the presentations here. If there is, feel free to share or ask questions or anything with that. And also be sure to connect with me later if you're interested in adding on here or helping us develop our permanent Digital Citizenship Museum in Kitely. We're very excited about that. I'll also mention our spaceship. If you saw a spaceship in the distance, like over just past where we met at our meeting area. That spaceship is our Hypergrid Resource Center, where we're putting information on how to get to these other various virtual worlds like Kitely, InWorlds, Cyber Lounge, the web-based virtual world that we've visited. And so if you're interested in that, you can contact me later or visit our spaceship. And with that, I'll close. We've been here about an hour, but I'll stay a bit longer for any questions or comments or any suggestions that you all might have. Thanks so much for coming to the Digital Citizenship Exhibit. I hope you'll landmark it and come back, bring others, because it'll be here through the summer.
Well, thank you, Val. That's been a wonderful presentation as always, and we're so happy to have you involved in the SLMOOC again this year. And everybody who's in the course should remember that there will be another presentation by Val and her colleagues later in June as well. So if you are not in the SLMOOC, search for Integrating Technology in Places. That's the name of the building where the SLMOOC headquarters is. Otherwise, check back on the physical check back for the physical calendar in the SLMOOC headquarters or on the on the Google Calendar, which is a public calendar that is there in the headquarters, and it gives you a link for that and so on. So we're really delighted to have Val's participation, in this digital citizenship project could not be more important and could not showcase more creative ways to use virtual worlds and to think about citizenship in virtual worlds. So we want to thank you very much, not only for the presentation, but for the work that you've been doing. And certainly hang on as long as you want, guys. I'm going to shut off the recording and head over to the SLMOOC building to get all of Val's wonderful links into a note card that will be available to you in the board, and will also be available in the description on the YouTube video that should go up later today. So thank you, Val. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for coming.
You're most welcome. It's been great seeing all of you here.